July 2025. Astronomers detect 3I/Atlas, only the third interstellar object ever observed, streaking into our solar system at an incomprehensible velocity. When the James Webb Space Telescope picks up a steady, rhythmic luminescence emanating from its core, light that no ordinary celestial rock should produce, everything transforms. The object's luminosity registers at triple the anticipated values. With no comet tail visible and no flickering whatsoever, its rotation remains clockwork precise. Then the revelation hits. Multiple independent research teams confirm a thermal oscillation pulsing every few hours, accompanied by cascades of anomalous radio transmissions that correspond to no recognized natural phenomenon. If these findings hold true, this could represent humanity's first concrete evidence of something manufactured rather than naturally formed, advancing toward us at this very moment. What exactly is 3I/Atlas? And why has its arrival prompted the world's foremost scientists to demand immediate answers? August 6, 2025. Deep within the data streams flowing from the James Webb Space Telescope, a team of NIR-spec operators flagged something profoundly unusual. The initial infrared imagery of 3I/Atlas revealed a concentrated radiance at the object's nucleus, not a dispersed haze, not a diffuse coma, but rather a tightly focused, isolated energy source brilliant enough to eclipse the surrounding particulate matter. The measurements arrived pristine, showing no indication of instrumental malfunction or solar contamination. On the raw data plots, the thermal signature stood stark and unmistakable, a white-hot core transitioning into colored bands, all concentrated around a nucleus that no telescope could actually resolve in detail. The Webb team, directed by senior instrument scientist Dr. Lena Marvich, scrutinized calibration logs before running the calculations again. The emission remained constant, maintaining intensity levels 3 times greater than any theoretical model predicted for an object of this size and distance. There was no tail, no variation in output, only a fixed, unwavering beacon projecting into the darkness. The team's internal communications exploded with questions. Was this conventional outgassing, or something entirely unprecedented? Archival investigations commenced immediately. Data from Hubble and tests earlier that summer had hinted at an unusually active object already radiating far beyond Jupiter's orbit, long before solar radiation could trigger typical cometary behavior. Yet nothing in those historical records approached the clarity or potency of Webb's new observations. For the operators, the conclusion became inescapable. This was no routine discovery. The thermal energy originated from deep within the object's interior, not from its sun-facing surface. And whatever mechanism powered it, conventional astrophysical principles simply did not apply. The optical survey teams, led by the Atlas Group and Chilean analysts operating Hubble, initiated their own comprehensive verification protocols. Their primary concern centered on luminosity. By every standard astrophysical metric, 3I/Atlas shone at nearly triple the intensity expected for a body of its calculated size and distance. Light curve analyses conducted over multiple weeks demonstrated steady, unchanging output. No diminishments, no intensifications, no evidence of the characteristic flickering typically caused by gas jets or irregular surface topography. For comparison, conventional comets brighten and dim as they tumble through space, their volatile, icy surfaces bending erratically. Here, the pattern appeared almost perfectly linear, with a measured rotation period of approximately 6 hours, sufficient time to reveal any significant surface activity, yet nothing manifested. Hubble's high-resolution imaging searched for the classic cometary tail, that streaming plume signaling ice transforming into vapor. Instead, the object appeared encased within a compact, teardrop-shaped envelope, more resembling a shroud than a tail. Analysts noted something particularly perplexing. Even at 6 astronomical units from the Sun, where solar radiation is weak and most comets remain dormant, 3I/Atlas was already intensely active, glowing brilliantly against the cosmic void. No model incorporating solar heating or standard outgassing mechanisms could account for either the intensity or the timing of this activity. These contradictions left the optical teams confronting an enigma, a celestial body too luminous, too stable, and too self-contained to fit any established classification. The conventional rules governing cometary behavior simply did not apply. For the researchers, the logical next step crystallized. If the luminescence wasn't originating from the surface, perhaps the answer lay buried deeper within. Infrared analysts within the Webb team began meticulously dissecting the time series data, searching for any discernible pattern in the thermal energy radiating from 3I/Atlas's core. What captured their attention wasn't merely the intensity, but its cadence. Every 4 hours, the central luminescence swelled and receded in a slow, methodical cycle. The pulse was unmistakable, steady, almost mechanical in nature, with energy cresting at the center and propagating outward in waves. No random fluctuation, no chaotic eruption. The data logs accumulated timestamps, each documenting a rise and fall that repeated with eerie precision. Dr. Alina Marvich and her research group mapped these intervals against the object's rotational dynamics and orbital parameters, searching for a natural explanation. Nothing correlated. The thermal output didn't track with surface features or solar input. It pulsed from deep within the interior, unaffected by changing angles of solar illumination or variations in heliocentric distance. To the Webb operators, it appeared less like a comet's outgassing behavior and more like the rhythmic heartbeat of something deliberately constructed. Radio observatories spanning from California to South Africa directed their antenna rays toward 3I/Atlas, searching for any trace of electromagnetic activity beyond the optical and infrared spectra. The Allen Telescope Array, led by Dr. Kavita Ralph, began filtering through hours of wideband data, eliminating background interference and satellite contamination. The team isolated something that defied conventional explanation, a faint, narrow-band pulse repeating every 4 hours with unwavering regularity. Fourier analysis confirmed the pattern, a stable carrier wave cutting sharply through the cosmic static, with a repetition far too precise for random astronomical noise. Across multiple observation nights, the pulse maintained consistency, yet its precise timing drifted in lockstep with fluctuations in the solar wind, matching variations tracked by space weather monitoring systems. Independent research teams at Meerkat and Effelsberg verified the signal, systematically ruling out local interference and terrestrial origins. The pulse's persistence, its subtle environmental responsiveness, and its cross-hemisphere replication forced an unprecedented question into scientific discourse. Was it a natural astrophysical process or a deliberate transmission from something aware of its surroundings? Mid-August 2025, the anomaly intensified dramatically. Webb's live telemetry captured a sudden flare. 3I/Atlas brightened by nearly 40% in under an hour. The test satellite, still tracking from Earth orbit, confirmed the surge. Every telescope trained on the object registered the identical spike, not exclusively in visible wavelengths, but across thermal output as well. For a brief interval, the object radiated as though something within its structure had activated. Then, just as abruptly, the value stabilized, but a new, elevated baseline. Attention shifted to orbital mechanics. Marco Micheli and the European Space Agency's Near-Earth Object team executed updated trajectory models. The predicted path, calculated from months of accumulated data, no longer matched observed reality. Rather than drifting passively along its predicted course, 3I/Atlas had altered trajectory, its path bending closer to the plane of the solar system. Micheli's team debated potential causes: outgassing, measurement uncertainty, or something less familiar. The acceleration didn't conform to any documented cometary behavior. For the first time, the data suggested maneuver, with the energy flare and course alteration temporally linked in the observation logs. The question now pressed with greater urgency: what kind of object executes mid-flight course corrections? And why here at the periphery of the ecliptic plane? August 18, 2025. Webb's NIR spec instrument passed the investigation to spectroscopic specialists. Carrie Lee's research group at Johns Hopkins assumed leadership, analyzing the raw spectral data from 3I/Atlas. The expected cometary signatures, water ice, carbon dioxide, were present, but layered atop them sat a profound mystery. Several absorption lines refused to match any existing astronomical catalog. The reflectivity profile suggested metallic alloys, some echoing rare earth elements found exclusively in advanced terrestrial manufacturing processes. Buried within the data, a handful of spectral features aligned with theoretical quantum materials, structures described in theoretical physics literature but never before observed occurring naturally in space. For the team, the evidence pointed decisively away from random cosmic chemistry and toward something that appeared, at least in the data, to be engineered. By late August, access to raw telescope feeds began to constrict. Internal memoranda from NASA and the European Space Agency referenced new data protocols, citing planetary security concerns. The SETI Working Group, led by an undisclosed coordinator, convened to debate whether to transmit a mathematical signal toward 3I/Atlas. After contentious deliberation and a narrow vote, the message was sent. Prime number sequences, the periodic table, and fundamental physical constants. 72 hours later, a narrow-band response arrived. Timed to the second, the return pulse was distorted, yet its pattern precisely matched the original transmission window. Agency officials immediately classified the data, rerouting all communications to secure channels. Externally, speculation intensified exponentially. Internally, the atmosphere transformed from scientific curiosity to something approaching institutional caution. At the August International Astronomical Union emergency session, for leading hypotheses, outgassing jets, radiogenic heating, dust-light scattering, and mass estimation errors were rigorously tested and found inadequate. None could account for the complete chain of observed anomalies. Now, with the September flyby rapidly approaching, the countdown has begun. Every major astronomical instrument will be monitoring, hoping to acquire the definitive data that finally resolves the question. On August 6, 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope recorded 3I/Atlas emitting infrared radiation 3 times more intense than models predicted for its estimated size. Throughout the subsequent weeks, research teams documented a centralized pulsating thermal signature, a repeating radio transmission, and a sudden 40% luminosity flare that coincided precisely with a measurable shift in its trajectory. Facts corroborated by TESS, Hubble, and European Space Agency orbital tracking data. Spectroscopic analysis revealed rare earth alloys and absorption lines absent from current astrophysical databases. Despite multiple independent peer reviews, natural explanations, including outgassing, radioactive decay, and dust scattering effects, were systematically eliminated by the International Astronomical Union's Emergency Debate Panel. As of late September 2025, its closest approach to Earth is imminent, with major observatories worldwide preparing for intensive direct observation. What remains unequivocally clear? 3I/Atlas challenges every current theoretical model of interstellar objects, and its next passage near Earth will represent a decisive moment for planetary science, and perhaps for humanity itself. September 22nd, 2025. The object crossed the orbit of Mars. Every major telescope on Earth, and an orbit locked onto its trajectory. Dr. Marvich's team at Webb detected something new. The 4-hour pulse had accelerated to every 90 minutes. The thermal signature wasn't just intensifying, it was evolving, as if responding to its proximity to the inner solar system. At the Deep Space Network facility in Goldstone, California, Dr. Kavita Ralph watched her monitors with growing unease. The radio transmissions had shifted from simple pulses to complex modulated patterns. Her team's AI-assisted decoder identified mathematical progressions embedded within the signal, not just prime numbers, but sequences describing orbital mechanics, planetary positions, and most disturbingly, Earth's exact location within those calculations. "It knows we're here," Ralph whispered to her colleague. "It's not just passing through, it's navigating." The global scientific community erupted into emergency sessions. At NASA headquarters, Director Chun convened a crisis meeting with representatives from every major space agency. The question was no longer whether 3I/Atlas was artificial. The accumulating evidence had pushed that beyond reasonable doubt. The question now was, what were its intentions? September 24th, 2025, 3:47 Universal Time Coordinated. Marco Michele's orbital tracking team detected the impossible. 3I/Atlas had begun to slow down. The object that had been racing through the solar system at over 87 kilometers per second was decelerating at a rate that violated every principle of celestial mechanics. There were no visible thrusters, no exhaust plumes, yet the mathematical reality was undeniable. Something was breaking. Dr. Carey Lee's spectroscopic team captured the moment the object's surface began to change. The metallic signatures intensified and new emission lines appeared, exotic elements that shouldn't exist in nature. Then, at 4:12 Universal Time Coordinated, Hubble's high-resolution camera caught what would become the most analyzed image in human history. A section of 3I/Atlas's surface was unfolding. The teardrop-shaped shroud that had encased the object began to peel away in geometric segments, revealing a structure beneath. Not rock, not ice, a lattice of interconnected panels, dark and angular, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The object was shedding its disguise. At 6:30 Universal Time Coordinated, every radio telescope on Earth simultaneously received the same transmission. Not the narrowband pulse they'd been tracking, but a broadband signal carrying enormous amounts of data. The Allen Telescope Array, Arecibo's replacement facility in Puerto Rico, the Square Kilometer Array in South Africa, China's FAST telescope, all captured identical streams of information. Dr. Ralph's team worked frantically to decode the transmission. The data was structured, organized, unmistakably intentional. Within the first hour, they had isolated image files, visual representations using mathematical principles universal to any technological civilization. The first image showed 3I/Atlas itself, but from an external perspective, as a photograph from another craft. The second image showed a star map with a highlighted point of origin, a solar system 47 light-years away, orbiting a star cataloged as HD 95086. The third image stopped everyone cold. It showed Earth, rendered in perfect detail, with a timestamp, not from now, but from 1977. The year Voyager 1 and 2 were launched, carrying humanity's golden records into the cosmos. Dr. Chen's voice cracked as she addressed the emergency UN assembly via secure video link. They received our message. The Voyager probes. They've been traveling for 47 years, and now something has answered. September 25th, 2025. As 3I/Atlas continued its deceleration, now positioned between Earth and Mars, the James Webb Space Telescope captured unprecedented detail. The object had fully deployed, expanding from its compressed form into a structure nearly 3 kilometers across. It wasn't a ship in the conventional sense. It was a probe, an automated explorer sent across the vast interstellar distances to investigate the source of humanity's first deliberate message to the stars. The decoded transmissions continued streaming data, images of the civilization that had built it, mathematical descriptions of their technology, star charts showing their exploration of nearby systems. And then, embedded in the data stream, something that made every translator and linguist weep, an attempt at communication in human language, painstakingly reconstructed from the audio recordings on the Voyager golden records. The message was simple, assembled from fragments of music, greetings, and natural sounds that humanity had sent into the void nearly 5 decades earlier. Greetings. We received. We come. Peace. Knowledge. Exchange. The world held its breath. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every government scrambled to process the magnitude of what was occurring. Humanity was no longer alone, and the proof was waiting, suspended in space just beyond Mars, pulsing with energy and intent. September 26, 2025. An emergency session of world leaders, scientists, and ethicists convened virtually. The debate raged for hours. Should humanity respond? What should be said? Who had the authority to speak for Earth? Dr. Marvich stood before the assembled representatives, exhaustion etched into her features. We've spent 50 years wondering if anyone would hear our message. Now someone has, and they've traveled across the galaxy to meet us. We can't stay silent. We owe it to every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered. The vote was nearly unanimous. SETI's response team, working with linguists, mathematicians, and cultural representatives from across the globe, crafted humanity's reply. It took 17 hours of intense collaboration, but finally, The message was ready. At 2300 hours Universal Time Coordinated, the Deep Space Network transmitted Earth's response. Mathematical confirmations, images of human civilization, descriptions of our culture, our science, our art, and a simple message, transmitted in the same reconstructed language that 3i/Atlas had used. Greetings. Message received. Welcome. Peace. Knowledge. Yes. Exchange. September 27th, 2025, 8:15 Universal Time Coordinated. 3i/Atlas responded within minutes. A new data stream began, exponentially more complex than anything before. Webb's instruments detected the probe deploying smaller objects, dozens of them, each the size of a basketball, accelerating toward Earth using propulsion that left no visible exhaust. Panic rippled through defense networks until the trajectory calculations confirmed they weren't weapons. They were packages, information capsules, designed to enter Earth's atmosphere and land at designated coordinates. Major universities, research centers, and scientific institutions across every continent. The first capsule landed in the courtyard of the European Southern Observatory in Chile at 1447 Universal Time Coordinated. Scientists in protective gear approached cautiously, scanning for radiation, biological contaminants, anything hazardous. The readings came back clean. The object was inert, waiting. When they finally opened it using the mathematical instructions embedded in the latest transmission, they found something that would change everything. A data storage device, unlike anything terrestrial technology had produced, containing what appeared to be a complete library of the sender's scientific knowledge. Physics, mathematics, biology, engineering, all translated into mathematical and visual languages designed for comprehension by any technological species. Dr. Leese held the device in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. They're not invading. They're teaching. Just like we tried to do with Voyager. They're sharing everything they know. September 29th, 2025. With its mission completed, 3i/Atlas began to reconfigure. The deployed structure folded back into its compressed form, the panels reassembling into the teardrop shape that had first caught humanity's attention. The thermal pulse returned to its original 4-hour rhythm. The radio transmissions simplified to a single repeating message. Thank you. Continue. Explore. Not alone. At 1930 Universal Time Coordinated, every telescope watched as 3i/Atlas reignited its propulsion system, still invisible, still inexplicable by human physics. The object accelerated, building speed as it climbed out of the solar system's gravity well, heading back toward the stars. Within 72 hours, it had crossed Neptune's orbit. Within a week, it had passed the heliopause, returning to the vast darkness between stars. But it left behind a transformed world. In laboratories across Earth, scientists began the monumental task of decoding the gifted knowledge. The data capsules contained not just information, but warnings, challenges ascenders have faced in their own development, mistakes to avoid, dangers lurking in the cosmos, and promises that humanity was now part of a larger community, that other voices existed in the cosmic silence, that the universe was far stranger and more wondrous than anyone had imagined. Dr. Marvish stood at her telescope one final time, watching the fading infrared signature of 3i/Atlas disappear into the stellar background. Her colleague asked what she was thinking. "I'm thinking about all those nights we spent wondering if we were alone," she said softly. "And now we know. We're not alone. We never were. We just needed to be patient enough to listen." Above them, the stars shone with new meaning. Somewhere among them, 47 light-years away, a civilization had heard humanity's first tentative call into the darkness, and they had answered not with conquest or indifference, but with the most precious gift one intelligence could offer another, knowledge, friendship, and a confirmation that in the vast, cold universe, consciousness reaches out to consciousness, bridging the impossible distances, turning strangers into neighbors, and transforming forever the lonely species that once believed it was alone. The age of isolation had ended. The age of connection had begun. And it all started with a mysterious object called 3i/Atlas. Not an invader, not a threat, but a messenger carrying the most important message humanity had ever received. You are not alone. Welcome to the cosmos. March 2026. The global scientific consortium established at the United Nations had made remarkable progress decoding the knowledge capsules. What they discovered rewrote not just physics and biology, but humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Dr. Sarah Chun, appointed as the International Director of Extraterrestrial Studies, addressed a packed auditorium at CERN. Behind her, holographic displays showed diagrams that would have seemed like magic just months earlier. The civilization that sent 3I/Atlas calls themselves the Anari, she began, her voice steady despite the historic weight of her words. They're approximately 800 years ahead of us technologically, and they've been exploring nearby star systems for over 3 centuries. But here's what changed everything for them, and what should humble us all. She gestured to a star map. The Anari nearly destroyed themselves 400 years ago. Climate collapse, resource wars, ideological conflicts, the same challenges we face today. They survived by a margin so thin that it terrified them. And in that terror, they made a choice. Any civilization that reaches out to the stars, that demonstrates curiosity rather than conquest, deserves help avoiding the same fate. The auditorium fell silent as the implications sank in. The data they've given us includes detailed climate stabilization technologies, fusion energy blueprints that our engineers have already verified as functional, medical treatments for diseases we've barely begun to understand, and agricultural techniques that could end world hunger within a decade. Chen's voice cracked with emotion. They're not just sharing knowledge. They're giving us a roadmap to survive our own adolescence as a species. But buried deep within the translated data was something that kept world leaders awake at night. Dr. Marvich discovered it while analyzing a section marked with symbols that the AI translators had flagged as urgent priority. In her secure office at NASA's Goddard Space Center, she compiled her findings into a classified briefing. The room was packed with officials from every major government when she presented her conclusions. The Anari aren't the only ones out there, Marvich said, her face grave. According to their records, they've detected signs of at least 43 other technological civilizations within 200 light-years of Earth. Most are like them, explorers, scientists, cultures that survive their own growing pains. But, she paused, pulling up a new image. It showed a region of space, marked in ominous red. There are others. The Anari call them the harvesters. We don't have much information. The data becomes fragmented here, possibly deliberately obscured. But what we can piece together suggests civilizations that view emerging species as resources. The Anhari's warning is clear. We're entering a galactic neighborhood, and not all the neighbors are friendly. General Morrison from the U.S. Space Force leaned forward. Are they coming here? The harvesters? We don't know, Marvich admitted. But the Anari included specifications for detection arrays and defensive technologies. They're not just teaching us science, they're helping us prepare. April 15, 2026. The Allen Telescope Array detected a new transmission, not from the direction 3I/Atlas had departed, but from somewhere else entirely, a point in space toward the constellation Lyra, approximately 25 light-years distant. Dr. Ralph's team worked through the night to decode it. Unlike the mathematical elegance of the Anari message, the signal was chaotic, fragmented, almost desperate. When the translation finally emerged, it sent shockwaves through every intelligence agency on Earth. The message was simple, repeated over and over. Species 7-4-9-2. Designation, human. Status, contacted. Anhari intervention confirmed. Warning, Harvester probe detected your origin world. Timeline, 18 months. Recommendation, prepare. We cannot help. We are sorry. Survive. The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun. Every attempt to respond received only silence. Dr. Chen stood before the UN Security Council, her hands trembling as she held the decoded message. We're not sure who sent this. The linguistic structure suggests another species, possibly one that's had previous encounters with these harvesters. The Anari data contains references to civilizations that went silent suddenly. We assume natural disasters, stellar events. Now we're not so certain. The Secretary General's voice was barely a whisper. 18 months. That's all we have. Maybe less, Chen replied. The message was sent 25 years ago. It's been traveling at light speed since then. Whatever they detected happened a quarter century in the past. The Harvester probe could already be in our solar system. What followed was unprecedented in human history. Every nation, every corporation, every research institution began working toward a single goal: survival. The blueprints from the Onari were distributed globally. Fusion reactors were constructed in record time. Defense satellites incorporating alien detection technology ringed the Earth. Underground facilities were excavated on every continent. But more importantly, humanity began to change from within. Dr. Marcus Webb, a sociologist at Oxford, documented the transformation in his daily broadcasts that reached billions. "We're witnessing something extraordinary," he said, standing in what used to be a war-torn region now bustling with international cooperation. Former enemies are sharing resources. Borders are becoming irrelevant. It took the threat of extinction and the kindness of strangers from the stars to make us realize we're all on the same fragile ship, floating in a dangerous ocean. The Onari had included in their data package something unexpected: cultural records, art, music, philosophy. Humanity devoured it all, fascinated by the parallels and differences. The Onari had literature that explored themes humans found achingly familiar: love, loss, hope, fear. Their music resonated with emotional frequencies that transcended species. A global art project emerged, the Cosmic Gallery. Every nation contributed pieces of human culture, history, and achievement to a massive digital archive. If the worst came to pass, if the harvesters came and humanity fell, at least the universe would know we existed. Our songs would echo in the void. Our stories would survive, even if we didn't. November 2026. The detection arrays, gifts from the Onari, began screaming alerts. Something was entering the outer solar system, moving fast, broadcasting no identification, responding to no hails. It was smaller than 3i/Atlas had been, more aggressive in its movements, and it was heading directly toward the inner planets. Admiral Jessica Torres commanded the newly formed United Earth Space Defense from an orbital platform above the planet. Every screen in the command center showed the same thing: an unknown object, accelerating toward Earth, estimated arrival in 48 hours. Status on planetary shields? Torres barked. 73% operational. Her tactical officer responded. The fusion generators are online, but we're still calibrating the field harmonics. If that thing comes in hot, we might not hold. Torres watched the object on the main display. It wasn't trying to hide. It wasn't communicating. It was just coming, inexorable as gravity, deadly as a bullet. "Prepare kinetic interceptors," she ordered. "And give me a line to Dr. Chun. If the Onari left us any last-minute tricks, now would be a really good time to find them." November 18th, 2026, 14:23 Universal Time Coordinated. The object decelerated sharply, stopping just beyond the orbit of Mars. Every weapon humanity could bring to bear was trained on it, fingers hovering over triggers that would launch technologies humans barely understood. Then it began transmitting. The signal was mathematical, cold, utterly devoid of the warmth that had characterized the Onari contact. Dr. Ralph's team translated it in real time, her voice shaking as she read the message aloud to the assembled Defense Council. Species, human. Classification, primitive. Resource value, minimal. Cultural analysis, insufficient data. Interrogative, inherent protection claim valid. The transmission paused, as if waiting for a response. Admiral Torres looked at Dr. Chun. "What do we tell them?" Chen's mind raced through the Onari data, searching for any precedent, any clue. Then she found it, buried in a diplomatic protocol section they'd barely begun to translate. The Onari had established something across their explored region of space: protection agreements. Species under their mentorship were marked as off-limits to exploitation. "Tell them yes," Chen said firmly. "We are under Onari protection. And tell them we are not as primitive as they think. We're armed with Onari technology, and we will defend ourselves." The response was transmitted. The universe held its breath. For 3 hours and 47 minutes, the object remained silent and motionless. Every sensor humanity possessed watched it, waiting for the first sign of aggression. Fighter craft, equipped with weapons derived from Onari schematics, maintained patrol patterns around Earth. Millions of people worldwide watched the sky, wondering if they were witnessing humanity's final hours. Then the object moved, not toward Earth, but rotating, turning as if examining the planet from every angle. The sensors detected intense scanning activity. The probe was analyzing Earth's defenses, its technological signatures, its preparations. A new transmission arrived. Analysis complete. NHARI technological signatures confirmed. Defensive capabilities adequate. Species classification. Revised protected status. Warning logged. Harvester activities in this sector will cease. Rationale. Cost-benefit analysis unfavorable. Admiral Torres felt the tension drain from her shoulders, but kept her voice steady. What does that mean? Are they leaving? Dr. Ralph was already analyzing the subtext in the message structure. I think we just passed the test. The harvesters aren't mindless destroyers. They're pragmatic. They exploit species that can't defend themselves. But we've proven we can, thanks to the Onari. We're not worth the fight. The object began to accelerate, changing course away from Earth, heading back toward deep space. Within 6 hours, it had crossed the heliopause and vanished from human sensors. But before it left, it transmitted one final message, and this one was different. Not cold mathematics, but something almost respectful. Species, human. Survival, acknowledged. Growth, anticipated. Future encounters, probable. Recommendation, continued development. The galaxy is watching.